Now, what is very vital is how a company responds, monitors this environmental change and responds to it. Like I mentioned before, those who don't change, those who don't adapt, those who don't evolve, they decline, they die. So, in order to prevent such an undesirable outcome, it's important for organizations to understand what is going on in their business environment and respond and adapt to this change. So, this means that you need to collect information and understand that information, but at the same time the decision really is yours as the professional. Now, if you look at each of these various aspects, what also is required at the same time is for companies to understand, in order to make the decision, what exactly this means for them. A very famous and oft repeated technique is the one called the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So, usually a company first figures out what exactly its internal strengths and weaknesses are, either absolutely or vis-a-vis competition, and matches those against external opportunities and threats, and sees then what actions are needed to be taken by it. So, if you look at it from a pure opportunity kind of a matrix, on the one side you have a parameter like the attractiveness of an opportunity, and the other side is the probability of success. Now, for many firms, there are many opportunities which look at very attractive. Who would have thought, for example, when one looks at Bharti Airtel today, that a company which was just producing cordless and other kinds of telephone instruments would today be India's largest cell phone provider. Nobody would have really thought that that firm had the strengths and capabilities to have such a high degree of success in its industry. But the fact is that such a company did manage to succeed against considerable odds, and despite being a fledgling in terms of business. So, on the one side, when you look at it, you have the classic 2 by 2 matrix. Is the opportunity attractive enough, and is the probability of success high enough, in which case it falls in the upper left quadrant of this matrix. So, this is an attractive opportunity that also fits quite well with the firm's internal capabilities. So, for example, if a company which is essentially into cosmetics, for example, wants to move into a fairly good toiletry brand, now would that be a good fit? In many ways you might find it might be a good fit because the channels are more or less similar, the kind of marketing approaches required are more or less similar, the kind of advertising is pretty similar, maybe even the target audience could be pretty similar. So, one might think, especially if one is already in cosmetics, that that company might have a better chance of going into toiletries. Now, let us look at the other example where the probability of success is low, but the attractiveness of the market is not at all, is pretty high. So, which we are talking about is this particular aspect, which is there is an attractive market, assume the same toiletry thing, but this company might have the same channels. It might be an agarbatti company, but it has absolutely no clue about how to sell a lifestyle oriented brand. So, the firm might think that it has a pretty low probability of success on this one. Now, if you take the third quadrant, where the attractiveness is low, but the probability, the firm has great strengths in this area. Assume if you take the same agarbatti company, and there is always this concern about a lot of smoke, and some of the smoke is carcinogenic. Suppose there is a new kind of product which does not emit as much smoke and is substantially less carcinogenic, but the growth of the agarbatti market today is maybe not as much as it is in other products. Well, the market per se may not be very attractive, but this firm might consider it still an opportunity from its point of view, because it has the strengths already in terms of several other aspects of the business. And if both the attractiveness is low and your firm's probability of success is low, the decision is pretty clear. You just forget about it. So, as you can see, there are several aspects when one looks at the environment. Now, if you take in each of these things, there are several issues here. For instance, the economic environment might comprise issues like, is the GDP of the nation growing, is per capita income growing, is consumable, is the surplus available that's growing. Now each of these can influence the opportunity that is being analyzed. If you take the social dynamics, if you look at toiletries and cosmetics, a few years ago male cosmetics or male grooming was fairly unheard of. It was not considered done thing for a male to spend a lot of time, energy and money on grooming himself or in terms of looking good. But today if you look at it, that market has exploded. You find a lot of social changes that have come about where males feel the need to look good, present themselves better, smell good and so on and so forth, which explains the explosion in fitness centers, number of beauty parlors which are aimed either unisex or male oriented. You also have technological aspects, and the internet, the telecom business, the technology, IT, information technology business, all are great examples. But even if you look at other products, you will find products like the teleprinter, the telex machine, the cyclostyle, even the typewriter today are things that nobody can even hear of, can even consider. Nobody is even looking at those products. So at each step of the way, whether you look at the economic environment or you look at the social environment, you look at the technology environment, and if you look at the legal situation, in 1985 you had the Consumer Protection Act coming in that substantially changed the rights of consumers. Yes, implementation still leaves a lot to be desired, but a customer has the right to go and complain about a company. You also have certain bodies now stepping in and taking an active role, proactively saying that there needs to be guidelines for broadcasters and advertisers. So there's a lot of things happening on the legal side as well. So on every aspect there are several challenges, and a company needs to match those with what it sees as its internal strengths